Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz guitarist and composer Jean Chaumont. He just released his latest album, 2018's The Beauty of Differences. He grew up in the suburbs outside of Paris, France, and moved to Princeton, New Jersey back in 2014. He's building his family in America, a solid career, and so much more. So please get to know him and dig this interview, my friends.
So at the top of this interview here, I just want to thank you for taking a minute out. Thanks for your music. I'm looking forward to talking with you.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad to be on the show. Thanks for picking me up.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and dive right in here. And let me ask you about your latest CD, The Beauty of Differences. It's a great album, and I want you to talk to me about what went into this album and how you feel about it.
I feel pretty good about it. I'm happy with the result. I think the players gave their soul in it, and it has been a great pleasure to work with all of them. And I think that David did a really great job on the sounds, and Enoch also had lots of insightful ideas on how to work on the mix and make a good product. So yeah, I'm really happy, and the album is filled with many things. It's kind of a spiritual journal, and I've been composing it since I arrived in the States. So it has been like I composed for 2 years on this album when I had the time to do so. I mean, there are lots of things in it. Well, there are things that were just in the moment, like Audrey's Code, for example, is the song inspired by the tactile communication experiences while my daughter was in Andrea's womb, my wife, and so we were often, I was, trying to connect with my daughter as much as I could, and so one possible way was to do a little tapping on Andrea's stomach to try to get, kind of a communication going on with Audrey. And one day was incredible. I was doing tick, 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 and then she answered right away, tick, 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 from the womb. And it was kind of a magical moment. And I came up with that idea of having this little back and forth, kind of a Morse code, and so that was like the beginning of the song, and then that emerged into that burst of energy and of a very full and dense melody and song that and there is some, I love that Sam on his solo went into this kind of shouting with his soprano. That reminds me of kind of, Audrey coming out of the womb and starting to cry, and so that was, for that song. Some other songs are more about geographic findings, like there is a canal just behind the house, Delaware and Raritan, and we've been doing many walks. It's beautiful at different seasons, and it just inspired me that kind of a walk song, blues. Some songs are more spiritual based, like I don't know, a Prayer for Creation. I was at a wedding, and the overture was that old melody, Beach Spring, and it was played in a very simple way. And I found that very inspiring, that little melody based on a pentatonic scale. It's very simple, but there is some, I don't know, there's a weight to it, and so I found those lyrics, and that to me it felt like they were really matching the theme of the album, and then Journey was really excited to be part of the project and to sing that song. So yeah, many inspirations.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, it sounds like it. So talk to me about growing up in France and how you got so involved in jazz.
Yeah, it's pretty random, right? Well, I grew up in the suburbs, in different suburbs, like around 1 hour from Paris. At first we were in a pretty rural area of suburbs. I think there were 250 inhabitants in that little village, and we were living with my parents were in a theater play, and we were living in a big building that they bought with other people from the play. And so, I mean, life was pretty simple. We would go play in the woods, and then we would, be around all those plays, rehearsals, and sometimes we were even involved in those plays. So yeah, I came to be interested in music very early on, and in that play there was a composer who was in charge of all the music, and he's very talented, and he saw that I was really interested in music, and I was always hanging by the piano and just playing whatever, and so he encouraged my parents to give me some music lessons, and so we found music schools, and I think I was like around 5 when I started piano, but most of the time my teachers were a little bit annoyed with me because I was not really serious in my practice. I would just go on the piano and say whatever, and yeah, I had an electronic piano, and I would put my earphones on, and I would just play for hours and compose my little songs. And it's just a little later, around 14 years old, that I picked up the guitar. There was one guitar in the living room because my mom sings and plays the guitar, and I picked it up, and I was really interested in it, and I was listening to lots of rock at that time, and they asked for guitar lessons, and so I started some lessons, and then 2 years later, when around 16 years old, I was in France. You have to choose between different options for high school. It's a moment when you can start to decide a little bit of your career path, and I was hesitant between music and art. I like to draw. I was doing that most of my school time. I was drawing during classes, and so I finally picked up the music, and I randomly went to a professional music school, and that same composer of the theater play was suggesting jazz as a style to study because it would help me learn more about the science of chords and to improvise, which would be skills that would be useful for any kind of modern music.
So let me ask you this. As we talk about your timeline in your life, what brought you to Princeton, New Jersey in 2014?
Yeah. Well, I met my wife in France in 2007. We got married in 2011 in France, and we lived there for until moving to Princeton. And while we were there, my wife, she's from California. She put on pause some studies that she started in the States for grad school, and she kept studying in France theology in the French university system. But then at some point, this opportunity to study here at Princeton came up, and it felt right. It felt like a good timing because when we got married, we said we would try to live in France for 3 years to experience my culture and then move to the States to experience her culture and then have children and I don't know what, maybe go back and forth and but to try to experience each other's culture while being without kids, you know, because you get a little bit more time on your hands to really experiment. And so it came like naturally, like it was a good timing to come here with this studies that Andrea was pursuing. And so she graduated back in May last year, and we stuck around in Princeton for another year.
You know, the one thing I think probably that I hear about living overseas in Europe and in other countries is that you see America as this kind of hotbed of jazz. So when you got here in America, you're so close to New York, was it kind of a dream realized to actually come over and play jazz in America?
That's true. It's like New York is like the jazz mecca for most jazzmen, and in France, it's not an exception. We see, with stars in our eyes, lots of musicians that are based here in New York, and of course, coming to Princeton, I saw that New York was not that far, and so I was excited to be able to connect a little bit with the musician community there and play with some of those music heroes.
Since you've been in New York and you've been in the States, what live jazz shows have you seen that really influenced you?
I grabbed the opportunity to see some guitar masters that I've been always influenced by. Like I saw John Scofield 2 months ago, Bill Frisell, Peter Bernstein, and I had the great pleasure to take some lessons with him too. Who else did I see recently? I saw Meyer Schneider playing with our orchestra, Joshua Raymond doing a premiere with a string quartet. Many really exciting musical things. But in Paris, you know, there is lots of concerts too, and like lots of those artists come like at least once a year to perform in Paris. So it feels like you can access this quality of music in France too.
You just released your first album. You've got your roots established here in America. You've been at this for some time now. How do you feel about your career? Are you happy of where it's going and what you've done up to this point?
Well, I have no clue of what's coming next, you know. I'm really happy of all those meetings that I had around New York and be able to connect with. I feel like I connected with musicians that are really pursuing the same kind of musical quests. The connection with Alex Sturm has been very important for me these last 2 years. For my career, this is my debut album, so it's, I'm hoping for the best, and my dream is to pursue to tour with this music and present it as many places as possible. And I'm in the window of transition, so I'm kind of waiting to see what's happening next.
Right on. So let me ask you this: why do you love jazz?
I feel like it's the music that has a beautiful history, and the experience of playing it is very thrilling, and also very hard. and there is a mix of technicality and rules that you can apply or not apply, and create your own voice. I feel like there is lots of room for making your own thing, and creating your own space sonically, and also studying the story of jazz, and especially being here in America. I feel honored to be able to contribute a little bit in this tradition. To me, it's a very noble art form that has been. I'm trying to put it in a comprehensible way. It's something we've been given by the African American people, and there is no question about the roots of this music, and I feel honored to be able to participate in this art form.
So if there was people that were going out to see music and they see your name on the billboard and they wanted to know what kind of style you played, who you are, just kind of what your vibe is, how would you describe what your voice is or what your sound is?
Yeah, it's pretty hard. I usually say it's a cross of different genres. There is jazz. There is some film scoring element to it. There is some pop music elements to it. And so I saw that recently in some reviews. They were saying fusion jazz to describe my genre. I'm not sure. I mean, for me, fusion relates to music that are more that feels a little bit more electric. I feel like my music is not that electric. Well, I mean, this album doesn't have much of that electric vibe, but it's a very hard thing, I think, try to categorize.
Absolutely.
Music. Mm.
Well, and it's really for the listener to decipher at the end of the day. So I understand it's a hard one. But at any rate, thank you for opening up about the beauty of differences, about your life and music and time in America and the whole mix of what we talked about. I appreciate your time today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks a lot, Joe.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Paris, Kansas City, and spots all over the globe, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Jean for his time, honesty, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com. And for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.